Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tim Lyons. I'm here with my co-host, Sean Gallivan. We're the co-owners of Paws on Mold, a canine mold detection company. And we'd just like to welcome everyone here to the first episode of our podcast, the Mold Dogs Podcast. So our first topic of the day, first episode today is what is a mold dog? So I'm going to pass this question on over here to Sean. Sean is a lifelong dog trainer, former combat veteran, has worked with dogs in the military, worked with dogs after the military, did specialize in detection work with explosive dogs and narcotics dogs. And we are proud that he is our partner and trainer of Zuko. So Sean, I think no better person to ask, what is a mold dog?
So mold dog, the same way you got a narcotic dog or you got an explosive dog, you got a mold dog. A mold dog is going to sniff for mold the same way an explosive dog is going to sniff for explosives, or a narcotic dog is going to sniff for narcotics. The only difference is that we have to kind of dive deeper into our training, because narcotics doesn't just grow on random things like mold does. Mold grows on wood, mold grows on drywall. So we have to make sure that we're constantly keeping our area safe and clean, but we're making sure that we're always growing and making sure that the dog is indicating on when it should be.
Nice. And so what are some of the areas, what are some of the places that a mold dog is utilized?
Mold dog can be utilized anywhere. Right now, the biggest place that we have it are in homes, but we have RVs, we've had yachts. I mean, it could be used for cars, anything that you really suspect that there to be mold on, the dog could really be used for.
Nice. Sean, what field of detection work do you think closest resembles mold detection work?
Closest resembles would have to be explosive detection, just because you got your narcotic detection, which is the most known, all your police officers, but they're going usually into your bad guy's house, and they don't care about keeping an upkeep. They want to make sure that they're breaking down a wall, they're breaking down, ripping up floors, whatever it is to get to the odor that they're trying to get to. Whereas if you have an explosive detection dog, well, we all know explosives are finicky, so you can't touch those things. You got to make sure your dog stays his distance away. So we have to have a nice, calm, and methodical dog, and that's kind of where we're gearing towards with Zuko, is making sure that he comes in, he stays calm, and he's not kind of barging through and wrecking things the way a narcotic dog potentially can.
Nice. So it seems like there's definitely similarities across the board, but each discipline is unique and all brings different challenges to the mix. What would you say overall? What makes a good detection dog? What are some of the characteristics that a dog needs to have to be working?
So we definitely need drive. We need commitment to odor, which comes down to drive. We need to make sure the dog wants to work, wants to have a good interaction with it. We need to make sure the dog has a toy drive or a prey drive, which we can indicate into a toy drive. The reason being is that if the dog is only doing it for food, that's going to be more towards a service dog, something that you want to check for your food to make sure there's no gluten in it, something where you're checking this to make sure this particular ingredient's not, but not something to where the dog is actually working 24/7. If you're doing that, the dog's not going to work nearly as proficient as the dog that's working off of prey drive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so Zuko, and so one of the reasons why you chose to train Zuko with a ball reward is that I've heard
Sure.
you talk about a lot, is that you don't feel, there's definitely both different ways to do everything, but you don't feel that you can really get the full potential out of the dog
For sure.
with treats. And
Well,
really
think about the times where people, they're not necessarily hungry. You wake up and you're not necessarily hungry, but you don't feel bad. You can still do a normal day's worth of work. And if that's the case, well, now if I'm trying to utilize you to do work off of food and you're not even hungry, how am I going to get that? But if I offer you to have the time of your life, who's not willing to have a time of your life every single second of the day?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it matters what time of day it is. If Zuko sees a ball, he's coming for it.
For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what we wanted to talk a little bit about, because we get a lot of questions at Paws on Mold about the process and what's involved in hiring a mold dog. So we wanted to talk a little bit about that process and how we were able to achieve that process, how it kind of relates to training. And what I mean by that is we kind of feel the biggest value in a mold dog, in having a mold dog, is that the dog can detect dry mold. And so that usually is in homes that might the wall might be beautiful, it's painted, everything looks great, and there's no signs of it from the outside. So the value that the dog can bring, maybe more than a traditional inspection, is that they can detect this dry mold.
Absolutely.
And so when we go into homes in this it's like, how do we know? How do I make sure Zuko does it? How did we achieve the search to where he's not going to miss walls? Like what did we do in our training to, to achieve that?
The number one thing that we do in training that any working dog should be doing, and most working dogs are held to a standard to do, is training never stops. Training is constantly going. We're constantly training our dog. Every week I see Zuko, at least multiple times a week I'm seeing him. And I know that you're training him at home on our off time. So the thing is that we got to make sure that this dog is dialed in. And it's the same thing that goes for a narcotics dog, is that you're searching for narcotics and you're training for narcotics for that one time that you go onto the street and you potentially find the narcotics. You're not doing it. You're not training for 5 minutes and then going on the street for 5 years. You're training for 5 years and utilizing it for 5 minutes. And that's the whole purpose of what we're trying to do. The same thing is that constant training. We want to make sure practice makes perfect. So when our dogs go in and are indicating, they're locked in.
They're locked in, right? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And so when we decide, we knew that the dog needs to go along an entire wall and not veer away from that wall in areas. And so you stressed it a lot in training about training and search patterns. So can you talk a little bit about search patterns in mold and in mold discipline, and maybe how, because you did a lot of explosive work, and so maybe the difference in that, or is there any difference?
So explosives, all odor travels down. That's a fact, and we all know that. But the problem is that just because it travels down doesn't mean it's going to travel down. You know, you have so many places in the air or in the corner of a drywall that could be pulling odor in. You have another place in the drywall that could be pushing odor out. You have streams of air from the air conditioning. There's so many things that could be boggling
positive and negative airflow coming from the cavities of the walls, right?
Yeah. And it's almost just like a current in the water, in the ocean. It's just plummeting it, right? You have no idea where it's going to go, where like, you know that there's mold here, but sometimes the dog is indicating right here, you know? So I think that can go into both things, because you have the way mold, our odor is traveling, but the difference, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one what the difference
so
would be.
You wouldn't say, because you know, unfortunately you hear, I feel a little bit too often that I kind of feel a little bit too often that like the mold dog is going to save the day. It's the answers to everything, and that it's going to pinpoint within inches exactly where your problem is every single time. And the more you kind of, from the very beginning when we did start doing the research on this and you're reading other people saying this, you're like, that's just not true.
For sure.
That's just not, you always kept telling me that. And now that I've been doing over a year now, that I've realized that is true, because it depends on where the odor is, how it's flowing.
Yeah.
Yes, the gases have weight to them, so they're going to fall. But what's blown? Where's the blow? The gas are being blown by positive air, negative airflow, cracks. Where if we're looking at a wall, it could be coming out of for instance, out of the wall socket, right? But it could be, which is 5 feet to the right of the window, but the major source is at that window, but the biggest airflow is coming out of the wall socket, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And so, you know, there's limitations to the dog, you know, but we feel like the dog is an incredible tool.
Absolutely.
And so we've seen the dog just do amazing things. We've seen the dog go in after inspections, afterward they've had multiple traditional inspections.
But there's also, I'd say this is what separates us, is that we have controllable conditions. That's what separates us from explosive detection. And in mold detection, we have controllable conditions. I can control the AC. I can shut off the fan. I can do things like this. Whereas when you're searching for explosives, you're on a budget. You got to go at a quick time. You know, you don't have time to really do all these things. So
that makes sense.
We do have control for that, and we also have the meticulous. But just like you said, Odor has a mind of his own sometimes. So even though when you think you know it, it hits you with a back hit.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. We can try, and we do try to control the environment, search environment as best we can. And you mentioned HVAC systems because we have to deal with a lot of contaminated systems. So sometimes we search with the air on or with the air off, and seeing if his alerts change with the airflow off. So those are all things that we try to get our handle on as best we can and try to replicate that in training as best we can. And we can get as close as we can in training, but we're never going to get, the dog is always going to know, correct me if I'm wrong, the dog is always going to know the difference on whether he's training or whether he's in a live environment searching.
That's the whole purpose of training, is that we want to put him into so many different scenarios to where that's what we're kind of doing, is boggling his brain to where he's not necessarily sure if this is training or not. But the more that we train in one specific area, then the dog is always going to know. So when we start changing up our areas and we start changing up where we're constantly in new homes, those homes are still training areas because we're putting odors out and there before we go. We'll make sure we're doing it towards the middle of it. We're making sure our dog is still hitting odor. So as long as our dog is in different areas, then our dog is going to get even more solid. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's unfortunate. Unfortunate might be the wrong word, but we see a lot. We do see a lot of dogs that a person will buy a dog or get a dog, and then they hire a trainer. They ship the dog off. They get the dog trained on mold. And then maybe the owner will go there, the handler will go there for the last week or two to learn what the dog has learned and learn how to handle the dog.
For sure.
And then from there, they're going on and going into homes and searching homes and stuff. And I know you had a hard time from that in the beginning, and I'm 100% on board because I'm witness and just see the incredible value that I have that you're my partner and that you live 20 minutes from me.
For sure.
Because I feel that I've done this enough to realize that I think that the dog is at his best possible scenario but he's at the best possible scenario his highest point as soon as he leaves the trainer. And if that, he's not going, he should in real world, if they had a good handler and the training continued, that dog should improve. But unfortunately, if they doesn't go back and revisit the master trainers and the handler isn't into it hasn't learned those skills, and you can't in a couple weeks.
It all goes down to even dog training. The dog training business is that you got dog trainers that offer lifetime guarantees for one-on-ones, and then you got some dog trainers that offer one or two one-on-ones that come at the end of it. And at the end of the day, who's going to have the better success rate? If we can get the person that we're giving the dog to, they don't know anything that we've done with that dog. So it's always going to do this unless we get the handler or the new owner, or the old owner rather, to come in and start training with us, and then we can make sure that stays level. But if you're only offering one or two sessions, then that's going to instantly start declining. You know what I mean? And that's why we offer lifetime.
I feel lucky because I think it's a pretty rare occasion that I was able to, from day one until Zuko was finally, and you were like months before, you're like, dog's ready, Tim. Dog's ready to go. And I'm like, we need more time, more please. And but he was right. But I got to witness the training and participate in the training, and you empowered me to do the handling from the beginning.
For sure.
And I just learned so much, and I scratched my head.
And there's no way that it could be done in a 2-week course.
I scratched my head thinking, how could you just can't.
Yeah.
Because you're still learning.
For sure.
I know you still do research and you still look, and there's some guys you respect in the industry, of course.
For sure. For sure. As a dog trainer, as a canine handler, you have to be open and understand that there's always better ways to do it, and to have an open perception to that. But to think that it's my way or the highway, that's 20 years ago. That's been debunked for so long. And then you can see the difference in the way that these dogs are working nowadays.
Which we should probably say, full disclosure, I mean, he's an expert, but we don't know everything. But we felt like in starting this endeavor and seeing the two, there's kind of two different ways to train the mold dogs here in the past, and we took this direction. But like we felt like there wasn't a lot of information on that. There wasn't a lot of information on mold dogs, and there wasn't, the amount of questions that we get as business owners and in searching these homes, but then just overall knowledge of it. And so that's one of the reasons why we're starting the Mold Dogs podcast, is just to bring light to the industry, because we feel like, you feel it's a valuable part, could be a lot better than it is now. I almost feel like it's been somewhat of a niche thing in the last 20 years, but I don't think it's really hit its full potential on the ability to really penetrate the industry and help the industry out in ridding homes.
There wasn't a team. There wasn't teams that come together. It was one person, and you need the dog, you need the mold guy, you need the handler, you need the biologist. You need a team to be able to do this, and that was the problem. I think that the failure was before.
Absolutely, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Until next time, Mold Dogs Podcast.